Welcome to UF222, Foundations of Ethics in Society. My name is Dr. Justin Davis. The emphasis of this UF200 course is going to be on the American religious history. That is, the history and movements that have made up American religious life from the colonial era till about the end of the 20th century. I'm stopping short of those who are generally still alive, as those histories can still change and evolve. But the different movements and motivations that have happened within the American religious landscape is going to be what our focus is on, including, like all UF 200 series courses, looking at the relationship of ethics and society.
One of the things we're going to talk about in this class is religion, what it means for us, how it impacts us, and how societies move and evolve with it. So an opening question for you to think about is, what is religion? It's a term that we use all the time, and we have a sort of understanding. If I see it, yes, that's religion. No, that's not. But what is it? Really? Write down a definition. What is a religion? Similarly, as a sort of basis for UF classes is the idea of ethics. So, what is ethics? Right? We're foundations of ethics in society. So, what is ethics? What's the difference between that and just personal morality? How is it you're going to see these things? Again, we kind of know what we're talking about, but do we know what we're talking about? Teasing these out have got tremendous value for us. Now, I want to kind of add a little bit more of what we're going to do in this class. This class is largely divided into three sections. The first is religious studies and ethics. We're going to talk about what is religion from the sort of scholarly point of view. We're going to talk about your worldview. We're going to talk about the academic study of religion. We're going to kind of tease out at least what some scholars do to help define what is religion and what is the purview of religious studies. We're also going to lay the sort of foundation of what is ethics. We're going to look at the normative systems of ethics. We're going to look at consequentialism and deontology and virtue ethics. We're going to look at our choices that we make and its relation to what makes us an ethical person. Within that, too, we're going to kind of break up and understand why it is that we disagree with other people, how we address opposing point of view, and what's the best way of conflict resolution, as it were, throughout all of that. Then, the second section of our class, we're going to look at dominant trends in American religious life. We're going to look at what it is that people believe in America and what they have believed. What we see today is not inevitable, nor is it the same as what people believed at the founding of this country. There are new religious movements and movements that have got new ideas today that didn't exist before. It's quite possible that if you attend a church today, that denomination, that group, that sect, that whatever it is that you're a part of, didn't exist in this country at its founding. And or the total number of people who believe that is very different than what it is today. The third part of the class is going to be an application. We're going to be taking some of these discussions from the first and second section and applying it to ourselves. We're going to actually see and tease out what these things are. And one possible way we're going to do this is through the Reacting Through the Past trial of Anne Hutchinson. Now, this will be done if this is an in-person class. If this is a class that is going to be structured online or has to switch modalities for whatever reason, we're still not too terribly far away from a pandemic which shut down the university. This application is going to look different. So we'll kind of address that and talk to me in class on how we're going to do this, and we'll tease that out there. Now, this is a University Foundations course. There are roughly 115 different sections of UF200 in the broad understanding of that. And they all share some common themes and requirements. They all focus on ethics and dialogue. And that is one of the things that we're teasing out rather specifically in that first third of class, and then kind of applying in the last third of class, and kind of seeing how that has lived itself out historically in that middle third. But because this is a UF200 class, there's some specific instruction on topics including talking across differences and dialogue that are very specific to this program. Again, there's value in them beyond just this program, but one of the things that the University Foundations program has requested is that we engage in the perspectives by CDI. What is this? It's a curriculum that has been developed which includes 6 modules, each taking about 20-25 minutes each to complete, and 3 different dialogue sessions, which they call peer-to-peer, where you're talking to somebody else about all of this. It's not guided by the instructor. It's, again, you guys discussing these things together. And these discussions are to help you dialogue across differences, so that way it makes a difference as you go by. And there's a lot of value that can be taken out of this for you. So students are going to be required to do the Perspectives online sessions on your own and be prepared to engage in dialogue and material within these dialogue sessions. The first is going to be set up with some in-class time, and the second 2 are going to be ones that you need to be able to figure out to assign with others. Not every single section of UF200 is doing the Perspectives program at this point. It is highly requested that we all do, and so this class is going to be doing that as well. One of the other things that UF is wanting to kind of emphasize going forward too is that because there are 115 different sections of the class, each with their own variation on how they're discussing, ethics and dialogue across differences, there is a choice in which class you take. You might have taken this class because you are fond of me. I thank you for that. You might have taken this class because you like the topic and thought, okay, this would be interesting to talk about religion and society and how this moves and operates. And that could be why you're here. Or you might be in the class because it fits your time schedule. And maybe the topic does or does not apply. Again, you have a choice. So feel free to find another section that might be a better fit for you personally. If you happen to encounter anything in the syllabus or our discussions here that you're like, you know what, I'd rather go over there, that's okay. You have that choice. You're not compelled to take this one. You do need to take one. And again, 115 different sections. A lot of variation exists within all of these here. This course fits, within this sort of discussion, but feel free. Now, I want you to make sure to click on the document that is the syllabus and go through all of that. Look into the syllabus. It's going to give you all of the information about how you're going to be graded and what it is that you're going to do. Right? You need to understand some of the basics of this. For instance, when you're submitting documents, they need to be in Word or PDF files. I don't take Google Docs. Why? Because I want to make sure I have permission to read your paper, and be surprised at how many times that hasn't happened. And to sort of circumvent that, you might put it in as a text entry if that box is available. Otherwise, if you're submitting it, it's going to be done as a Word or PDF file. Make sure that you're comfortable with the due dates that are there and understand which they are. Also, the syllabus has got a lot of information in there. That is there for your benefit. A good number of times, if you have a question, the answer is right there in the syllabus, because I walked you through and gave it to you in the long syllabus. To try to make sure that you actually looked at the syllabus and know it, there's actually a quiz that all students are expected to take that says essentially, I've looked at the syllabus. I see what's in the syllabus, so I know I can get most of these questions answered that way. I'm more than happy to meet with you during office hours, respond to emails, talk to you before or after class, depending on what the schedule looks like. But the vast majority of your questions are there in the syllabus. Most of how things are going to function are there. So before emailing, check the syllabus. For the record, too, the syllabus is correct. Canvas might give you a date or a time, or it might not give you any date or a time that something is due. What it says in the syllabus is going to be the correct one, unless I have announced through an announcement or some other way that, no, I'm going to extend this date or I'm going to change it based on any of this other stuff. So one of the very first things you're going to do in this class is to take a quiz on the syllabus to show that you've looked at it and that you're prepared to move forward and understand what it is that the syllabus offers, and hopefully be able to save you and me some stress along those lines. There's a basic code of conduct that exists in every class. Every time people gather around, we all have different things that we expect, and to help facilitate our engagements with one another. For this class, one of the basic ideas, which I think isn't that crazy, is that we're all kind to one another, both in person or online forums or however that happens to be. Understand that you might disagree with a person, you might even think an idea that a person has is crazy, but try to keep that somewhat vague. Talk about ideas and not people. Right? Again, be nice, don't be a jerk. That's kind of an easy thing. Another thing, if this is an in-person class, that's important for you to know, is that there are no cell phones allowed in the class. If your phone is out, I'm going to ask you to leave. Your cell phones are a massive distraction, and as much as many of us think we are able to multitask, we don't. Our friends give us a text, we want to think of something, and we jump in on that. Cell phones are a massive distraction. If they're out, I'm assuming that whatever is on that phone is more important for you that day than the class, and I'm going to ask you to leave. Now, there is one small caveat to this rule of phones out, you're out, and that is if you end up talking with the instructor ahead of time. If by chance you are the caregiver of somebody who's terminally ill or about to give birth, literally life or death situations, talk to me about that, and I'll probably forget a little bit and say something, and you'll go, hey, remember we talked about that? And I'll be like, yes, indeed we did. So just know that ahead of time. If by chance there is a reason for that, go ahead and discuss early on instead of after the fact. Other thing that might be a little bit different, no laptops or tablets in the class. Again, we've kind of trained ourselves to think that we can deal with two different worlds at the same time. And while notebooks are great for taking notes in, they're also very good for surfing the web and doing other things. And instead of actually maybe pondering a question for a little while, we stop and immediately do a quick search, ask our other professor Google for the answer, which might not always be right, or AI, which might be more artificial than intelligent within all of these as well. So we're not going to have these out as well. So make sure to bring paper and a pencil. There might be times where there will be an exception if you're presenting, for instance, in class on something at the end of the semester and you have your stuff up on your notebook, that'll be fine. Obviously, when that's not needing to be out anymore, it'll be put away. So again, there might be a handful of exceptions. If you think that there is a good reason for an exception, talk to me. If you're like, hey, I need it for having a reader or something else, that's actually one of the reasons why all of these classes are recorded, not just in case or when this class is in an online format, but also for those of you who want to go back and look at the notes and figure this stuff out. Everything that will be tested is going to be in one of these PowerPoint shows, in these YouTube videos that you're able to watch. So go back and watch them. It might actually be easier to find exactly what you want than in some sort of other recorded medium. So that's kind of the way this class is working. Another way this class works is that I don't do safe spaces. This class follows the University of Chicago model, where there is a commitment to freedom of inquiry and expression. What does this mean? That means I intend to speak on challenging issues from time to time. I expect to do things that question some of your basic assumptions. I also expect to be able to talk about things that actually happened, even if you don't particularly like that it happened or that a group of people did this. Especially when we're talking about religion, there's a lot of tension that exists within this because we're talking about some of your foundational belief systems. And yet, what do you do when there are some uglinesses that exist within how your group might have interacted with other groups of people, or some things that you hold today that might not have been acceptable before, or things that were acceptable before that you definitely don't think are okay today. Um, we can't carve all of that out and expect to learn anymore. The University of Chicago kind of provides this as a model, and I like to follow their model within all of this. You have to be able to be challenged to be able to explain what you believe. Now, as a general rule, I don't particularly care what you believe. I do, but as a general rule, I don't. You might believe and hold to things that I find to be morally repugnant or something that should be applauded and everyone should love you for it. In either case, I want you to know why it is that you hold the ideas that you hold. Every idea should be able to stand up to some scrutiny. It needs to be able to have the light shown on it, and people go, well, this is why I believe this. And you can accept it or reject it, but this is what things are. And so we have to be challenged to be able to do all of that. Trigger warnings also generally don't work. There's been countless studies on trigger warnings. I'll say all of them. There might be a few that I have not noticed, or another one that just that came out. But trigger warnings trigger the person that it's supposed to warn about triggering, and tell everybody else that they should be triggered about something, even if they weren't going to be triggered. In other words, the very effect that they're trying to do of avoiding some sort of catastrophe, it doesn't do. And so I'm not going to do them either. There might be a few times I might go, oh, okay, this conversation is going to be a little more intense, but it'll just be vague along those lines. As a general rule, there won't be a trigger warning. This class is going to talk about X, Y, and Z. Neither can we go ahead and know what somebody else is going to say in response to a question. Again, we need to be able to tease these things out, and this means we have to be okay with being challenged. To that end, also, again, go back to don't be a jerk. You can challenge somebody, but make sure you're doing so in a respectful sort of way. There's no reason to provoke somebody just to provoke them. To that end, also, there's nothing that's not allowed in the class other than sort of universalizing statements that shut down a free thought or exchange of ideas. The idea of this is impossible shouldn't be expressed, right? Nothing is truly impossible, at least in the realm of ideas that we're going to talk about. We might talk about difficulties people have, obstacles that they have, systems that have made things more difficult, but the idea of it being impossible, probably not, right? Everyone also has a right to speak on any topic. You can't say you don't know, you don't have my lived experience. That might be true, but they're allowed to speak on that, even if they don't have that lived experience. Your lived experience is something that you should be able to discuss and grow out of that as well, but that doesn't invalidate somebody else's opinions on that. In fact, they might say, I used to think this, but I haven't had that. Thanks for sharing from your personal perspective. I might revisit this. Or they might say, you know what, but I have these other examples that maybe don't line up with your lived experience, and I'm going to still believe something different. That is okay, right? No one's ideas are inherently invalid in this course. They may be wrong, right? But that doesn't mean that they're invalid. One of the other sorts of things that I want to do in this class is to kind of connect with a statement that Alexander Solzhenitsyn made in his Harvard speech in 1978. For those of you unfamiliar with Alexander Solzhenitsyn, he's a Russian from the 20th century who lived during the Soviet Union. He won the Nobel Prize for Literature and spent a good amount of his time in life in the gulags. So he saw the effects of what the Soviet Union was doing to those who were religious or political dissidents. When he ended up coming to America, still during the reign of the Soviet Union, he was asked to speak at Harvard, where Harvard was expecting him to say, America is great, the Soviet Union is horrible, and just kind of leave it at that. Although a lot of people wanted to hear everything he had to say. And Solzhenitsyn, while he does say, yes, the Soviet Union definitely had its sins, that's one of the reasons why he was in the gulags, wanted to point out that that doesn't make everything in the West perfect either. He says that without any censorship in the West, fashionable trends of thought and ideas are carefully separated from those which are not fashionable. Nothing is forbidden, but what is not fashionable will hardly ever find its way into periodicals or books or be heard in colleges. Legally, your researchers are free, but they are conditioned by the fashion of the day. So just as the class wants to be able to stretch and to learn, and that means we can't kind of close off dialogue, the same sort of thing applies when we're talking about what our ideas are. This one, I want to have this be a college and university course where we can hear and discuss things that are not always fashionable because maybe it's real or maybe it's going to change what's fashionable. So our researchers need to be free to actually do these things and not be immediately cast out as a result of that. To help make sure that you've kind of understand the guiding sort of principles of this course, things wrapped up with Solzhenitsyn's statement and the basic code of conduct, and that this class will follow the model that is advanced by the University of Chicago. There's going to be a guiding principles quiz. It should be one of the very first things you do along the lines of the syllabus quiz. You're going to take it, and it's going to say, yes, I agree that there are not safe spaces in this class, that I'm not supposed to be a jerk either. It's kind of implied within all of that. But know that that is the way that this class works and operates, and that you are essentially, by staying in the class, agreeing that this is the way that the class is going to work and that you're going to operate along these lines. There are two required books for this class. One is the Trial Van Hutchinson. If we are doing this class in person, this is going to be what we're spending our last third of the class doing. It is the game booklet for kind of the reenactment series that we're doing. And the other is Even Ilian's book, The Singing Heart, a book of quiet reflections. That's going to be used also later on in the course for group dialogue and dialogue across differences as a sort of application to that portion as well. So you're going to need to get both of those. Neither of them are needed immediately, but you'll need to have those before too long. So make sure you order those and have those with you. There's also going to be a reader provided by the instructor with the assigned readings for the class. So you're going to need to make sure that you look at that regularly on Canvas. There will even be some quizzes and some test questions that are generated only out of those readers. So you want to make sure that you have those available and you know where that is found in Canvas. So any questions you might have at this point? There probably, the answer is in the syllabus. If this is an in-person class, that'll be discussed there too. Other things, again, if this is an online class, look at the announcements. The announcements, generally speaking, will address all of the variations that this class might have, or some specifics on how this class is to proceed if it either begins online or moves online or anything else. The announcements are a great way of kind of dealing with all of the variations that happen in class. Some general scheduling notes too. As a general rule, all assignments are going to be due at noon, not at midnight. The syllabus might have some variation on this. If so, again, what the syllabus says is correct, but I don't do midnight due dates. I don't find them to be particularly honest because I'm not going to have a chance to look at them at midnight because I will hopefully be asleep. And I also don't want you staying up really late to try to get an assignment done. So you'll know the due dates of assignments and have means of being able to do that. Typically, they're going to be due on noon. Depending on the class, there might be some variations. If so, it'll be stated in the syllabus and given as an announcement by the instructor. But generally speaking, know that noon is the due date. If this is an in-person class and there's any days that already known that they're going to be online for one reason or another, there might be a conference I'm speaking at or something else along those lines where there's a schedule conflict. That'll be posted in the syllabus. Pay attention to that and to know which of those days are going to be done online only and not in person, or any days that there's going to be in-class study sessions or something else along those lines. Be knowledgeable of that. Also, the tests will be done online, not in class. So know that that means you will be taking that at home on your computer instead of in class. If you want to show up to the classroom to take it there, that'll be fine, but that's not what's going to happen, nor is that required. So be aware of these basic sort of scheduling notes on how that's going to be done. Why do you need to be in this class? That's not a weird question. A lot of people ask that about any of their classes, right? Why is it I need to be here? Why is it? Well, for some of you, the answer is simple of, well, I have to be here because it's required. Yeah, well, there's some truth to that. But then why does the university require this class? The university requires this class, or why it's a good reason for you to be here, is because there's some value in knowing who you are and the meaning that exists within there. John Vervaeke, a professor of psychology in Toronto, states that today we have a challenge which previous periods of history did not. Today we have increases in anxiety disorders, depression, despair, and suicide in North America and parts of Europe. These are symptoms of a problem, that he says. The challenge includes the environment, politics, and culture, and he calls this the meaning crisis. So in the West, we're facing a crisis of meaning. We don't know who we are. We've kind of been unmoored from our normal sense of identity. And so one of the values of this class talking about religion is that we're able to look back at systems that at least had an answer to the meaning crisis. And that maybe there's different ways of looking at that same notion of meaning. Maybe you're doing it through the environment or politics or something within culture, but we need to know who we are. And so this is one of the values that this class has. It's not just that it's required, but we need to know what we're here for. Not necessarily, big picture, but at least some notions of meaning that exist. Without that, we're falling into anxiety disorders and depression and despair, and regretfully, even suicide. Our society today has divorced itself from institutions, beliefs, and cultures which have provided meaning. Postmodern rebellion has resulted in modern apathy and malaise. Vervaeke and others have pointed out that one way to end the meaning crisis is to engage in historic systems of meaning. A tagline on their site, "Wisdom is not optional." right? So to overcome this lack of meaning that exists in society, we need to wisely anchor ourselves in systems of beliefs and practices which provide meaning. So this class helps to at least give us some anchor points. We are learning some of the wisdom from other systems. We're going to learn how things happened and how they shaped themselves and what that meant for them. So it helps us understand meaning through that way. Now, adding on to this, the naturalist Louis Agassiz states that facts are just stupid things until they're brought in a connection with some general law. One of the things this class does is to help provide those stupid things, these facts. You need to be able to take that and to make those connections. In many ways, this is what's going to give you the meaning to help solve the problem of the meaning crisis that has affected the West. This is one of the values that this class has. So, kind of wrapping up, think about who you are, right? What is the meaning that you have? Where does your meaning come from? And what's interesting about you? Might have an opportunity to share. If this is in class, I usually have an opportunity for people to share something interesting about them, something that they would share on a first date with somebody. Likely, where you're from, or the size of your family, or your favorite sports team isn't terribly interesting. It might be important. They likely are important. But what is something that helps conversation exist around you? Because that's part of what separates you from everybody else.